Hey, what's up everyone? This is Anthony for Anthony's Customs, and for this video we are looking at the Play Arts Kai Halo Reach Noble 6 figure. These figures are some of the earlier Halo figures that Play Arts put out, and they do have some problems, which is why I never got them originally, but now that I do have them, I'm happy to review them. I'm happy to have them, but I will point out the problems that I have found with the figures. This guy stands just about 9 inches tall to the top of his head. He has a total of 4 hands, basically a trigger hand for either side, a trigger finger hand, and then an open hand for either side. He comes with a grenade. All of the Reach figures come with a grenade, and they're actually really well done. They're painted really well, they're sculpted really well. The pegs are sometimes easy to remove like that, and then sometimes they're not. So that can be problematic. I don't particularly like having the pegs in there, but they are there. And then he comes with an assault rifle. Now the pegs on the weapons, they break because they were glued in, so basically anytime you try to take one out they tend to break. The person that owned this before me broke it and I guess tried to glue over it or something. I don't know what happened there. But it doesn't really bother me too much. I can clean that up some. But they don't have secondary weapons anyway, so there's really no reason to put the weapon on their back. They do have a peg hole on the back, so it could go there. But like I said, there's no secondary weapon, so put the gun in their hand and display it like a man. No, I'm just kidding. But really, you don't need to have it on their back, so that's okay with me. So that's it for the accessories. They do have pretty good paint jobs. They're not perfect, but they do look pretty nice. They have all the little lights and things painted. The little tab down there has a little red light on there. The blue ones across the chest. The ones on the thighs. You know, the whole deal. They have a lot of nice little details. You know, it looks pretty good. Standard for Play Arts. Granted, these guys don't have the hugest amount of detail, but it's not too bad. There's like a nice marbling, washy, dry brushy thing going on for the armor. It gives it a real nice worn look. I like that. I like the way the helmet's painted. The visor looks pretty good. Of course, it's not translucent at all or even mirror-like, but it does have a nice look to it, and it reminds me of the Reach game, so I think it looks pretty good. I forgot to point out, this technically counts as another accessory. They hold them okay, but it's not great, and you probably don't want to anyway, so you can just leave that in there, I think. So one of the problems I had, which was really the only real problem I had, was the hips. I thought the hips were way too big and it made the legs look too big, and it was just problematic, and I still stand by that. It does look weird, but that's only if you stand him straight on. If you look at him from the side, looks just about perfect. Once you get him posed, it's going to look just about perfect. So you can look past the oversized hips, the wide hips on this guy fairly easily, as long as you don't stand him up like this, which is kind of boring anyway, so don't do that. Then the other issue with these guys is that the hips are really loose. They're not so loose that it's a problem, and this guy's one of the better ones, so it's not too bad. But the hips are on the old style joints. It looks like the person that owned it before me put some glue in there to try to tighten it up. But they're just a standard ball peg for the hip. So they tend to be really loose on these guys, so do be careful if you are going to get them. Some of them are loose and can take shelf dives pretty easily. You see, they don't really hold their own weight that well with the hip. But that's really the only issue. Everything else works for me. I'm pretty happy with it. So let's take a look at the articulation. The head is on a double ball peg. You can kind of see in there if you try, but don't try and you'll be alright. It looks fine otherwise. So really good range of motion for the head, no problems there. The shoulders, kind of unique on these guys. I do like it a lot. They have this extra flap up here that's just kind of to hide the articulation, but the shoulder has the butterfly joint that we're used to, so that's good. But the butterfly joint, which they kind of do this all the time, but it's not nearly as effective as this, is the shoulder has a ball peg so it can move around on the butterfly joint, so that gives even extra articulation. And the shoulder itself isn't a ball, it actually sticks out a little bit and then has the hinge. The standard, what I normally call a ball hinge, is right there. But as you can see, it's not just a ball, it sticks out a little bit, so you get really good range of motion. You can bring the arm around the chest just fine. I do like that, and it doesn't look too bad from the back or the side. Of course you can see it, but it's not horrible. And then we have the bicep swivel on top of that, or underneath that, I guess. Standard ball hinge for the elbows. They do have elbow caps on these guys, so that's nice, and that tucks in when you fold it up, so that looks pretty good. It hides the joint a little bit. Then we have the same type of joint for the wrist. It's just a hinge. a ball hinge so it swivels in the forearm and in the hand, and then you can just swap the hands out by pulling them out. Be careful, sometimes they're really stiff on these guys, sometimes they're really loose. Give it a little wiggle, just try not to break it, and try not to pull it out the wrong way, because that happens sometimes too. But it's just a ball peg, or it's just a peg on either end, so you can worry about that on your own. Some of them are tight, some aren't. The upper torso is a double ball peg, so we get a pretty good range of motion every way we need to. Really no complaints there. Sometimes these get in the way, but it's not too big of a deal. Single ball peg for the lower torso, but you still get a pretty good range of motion there as well. Full swivel, no problem there. Floating crotch piece. It doesn't hide the openings as much as some of the newer ones do. Again, this is an older figure and they didn't quite have the hips down right, but it's not horrible. Once you get it posed, it won't be a problem at all. Even though the hips are loose, they still do have really good range of motion, full range, really no issues. Some to the side, it's a little bit limited, but you don't really need your Spartan to be doing the splits anyway. So they spin around on the ball peg, and then you can see that the thigh will actually spin around on top of the socket for the ball peg. So that's pretty good. We have double jointed knees, and they don't look too bad. I mean, obviously they don't look great, but I've seen a lot worse, and since the Spartans are kind of big and armory anyway, they can hide the ugliness of the joint a little bit with the armor, so that's okay by me. And then lastly, the ankles are on ball hinges, so we have the forward and back. If you leave the hinge normally, you can spin it around and get an ankle rocker out of it. Not a huge amount, and I didn't try that hard, but you can, finagle it around to get the ankle to go the way you want. So it's pretty good. Really, the only complaint I have for these guys is the hips. Of course, the pegs being glued into the guns is a problem, but it's not a huge problem. So the hips are really the only issue. And once you get them posed, put them in a stance or something, you're really not going to see too much of an issue. So let's put the gun in his hand and see how that'll look. He does hold the gun pretty nicely. Put it in a semi-realistic pose quickly. That's close enough. So let's lean him a little bit like he's actually getting ready to shoot. And then you see once he's posed, the hips are a little bit big still, but you don't notice it too much. I should probably have this one up and this one out. I don't know, however you want to pose it. The legs are a little bit big, but you can hide them fairly well if you spend the time posing it properly. Especially once you put them all on display next to each other, which I'll do at the end of reviewing all of the figures. I'll do a quick comparison just so you can see them all at once. There it is, guys. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more figure reviews, custom figures, and other good stuff. And in the meantime, keep collecting.